G'day everybody and welcome to another episode of Automotive Carnage. In today's episode we continue work on the 1979 Toyota Cressida that now has a Ford 5.4 litre V8 shoved into the engine bay of it. Now we want to get that engine running, so today we're going to build our fuel system. Okay, so there are two areas on the Cressida that I said I was not going to scrimp on parts, and that was the fuel system and the brakes. A, I don't want to catch on fire, and B, I actually want this car to stop in case something goes wrong. But today I want to focus on getting this engine running again in its new home. So for that, we need fuel and we need spark. Spark's linked to the computer. Computer needs to be reprogrammed, so I've got to send that away before I can even start to rewire this engine into this body. So what I can do today is start on the fuel system. Now what we're going to do, the goal is drop the factory Toyota fuel tank, retrofit the Ford Fairmont fuel pump and sender unit into the old tank, and then stick the old tank back in place. New lines, new regulators, should be good to go. That's the plan. Whether it's going to happen or not, we'll find out as we go along. So let's drop the fuel tank, see how bad it is, hopefully it's not too rusted out. Yeah, we'll go from there, eh? Let's see what happens. Alright, here we are at the back of the Cressida. Now in here, we've already opened the hatch to get into the sender unit, and there is already a hole that hopefully we can make a little bit larger, and well, that sun's a bit bright there, but hopefully we can fit the factory Ford Fairmont pump into there. We're just going to cut all these hoses, get out of the way, because we're going to replace them all anyway. We've had to take the rear bumper off, chrome bumper, because we need to get the tow ball out of the way. It kind of goes right underneath the fuel tank that we're trying to drop, so we're going to pull this off. I was in the process of taking it off properly and taking all the nuts and bolts off. I'm like, this is a bush car, I don't really care. So we're going to get my favourite toy, the grinder, and just grind all the nuts and bolts off, and we'll replace them later because that's easier. To all the ones who are saying you should restore this car, well, nature has started its own weight saving program, and there is quite a bit of rust everywhere. It's atrociously bad. In fact, I feel this body's probably going to twist once it feels the full force of the torque from the V8. That'll be interesting. Doors might not shut or open properly after that. Anyway, I'm getting carried away. I need to get the angle grinder. We'll take these bolts off and drop that tow ball. Hey! That's heavy. Alright, so I've just dropped the fuel tank. Let's see how bad it really is. Sucker out. Oh, he's not very big. Oh, nice big hole at least on there. One very dirty tank. Top looks good. Oh, that looks. Bottom looks good. Oh, thank you. Fixie hose. So you got a bung here, right, to drain the fuel out. Someone can't be bothered undoing that. And they've just poked a massive hole in here. Oh man, we might be able to plate that and weld it up. Besides that though, this tank appears to be in good condition. Yeah, no other obvious fractures, so I'll get this unit here out, grab the Fairmont one out of the BA, and hopefully this is deep enough to hold it. Hold the new one. Okay, so we've got our fuel tank from the Cressida on our workbench here, and the original holes are very small. As you can see, that is not too big, obviously, because this one here just had the fuel level sender unit, and this one had the actual pickup for the fuel. So this one's covered by the boot, so we can't get access to it. But this one here actually has an access point, so we're going to try and make our Ford fuel pump fit in this hole. And put this down. Yeah, you can see modern technology got a little bit bigger. That's not even going to fit in at all. So we're going to do a little bit of chopping. Now I've got the placement ring here that goes on top of the Ford fuel filter. And conveniently, on the Cressida tank, where that fits, it's nice and level. But also, there's actually an indent around here that is pretty much the right size of what we need to cut in here. So I'm going to use that as a guide, cut that out first, and then see if our pump fits. Now, judging by eye, it should just fit in there, but we'll find out once we get it in there. If we have to space it out, well, then we've got to space it out somehow. But that's what we're going to do now. Probably just get the angle grinder. There's been no fuel in this for God knows how many years, so it's as dry as a bone. Yeah, angle grind that cut out, and we'll see if the pump actually fits in. Let's get cutting. More cutting! So there we have it, one Ford Fairmont V8 pump sitting pretty inside our 79 Cressida fuel tank. That went surprisingly well. Just had to cut our hole a little bit bigger, as you saw. Drilled the holes to actually mount into place, tapped those using the original screws that held it into the Ford. And it's come out looking really good. The hoses are pointing not really an ideal location. It would be nice if they were that way, just a tad more, but because of how the tank dips down here, screw will have ended up just here where it wouldn't have held on very securely. So, but that's okay, we can work around it. A bit of rubber hose into the original hard line should work, but let's test fit it now and see how well it fits inside the actual vehicle. But I'm really chuffed for that. It's come out really good. So let's get in the car and see what it looks like. Now, I always believed this whole resto mod thing was meant to be really challenging and hard, but that fits beautifully. Like, that's awesome. It's almost perfect. Now, as I said, those hose outlets, I would have loved them to be like facing that way just a little bit more, but we've still got plenty of room under there, and if we need a little bit more, we can just cut into the side here and pretty much take this whole spare wheel well out, because yeah, there's not much actually holding it still in there, so it's pretty useless to us. So chopping into it ain't gonna make much difference. But yeah, so that's the fuel tank test fitted in. It looks good from that side. It looks good from under there. What's great is that all our lines, the new ones, are going to line up with the factory hard lines, so we should be able to use them no problem. So I've got all the rubber hose and connectors to obviously connect it all together, and down this end, same thing. We pick up the hard lines just here, and they need to go just there. So a little bit of barb connectors, or some safe don't catch me on fire type connectors there, going into some flexi hose down to our hard line, and that's pretty much the fuel system done. That's really cool. Now I thought I'd dress the engine up, because you know, now it's got the plastic covers on. That's Instagram ready, isn't it? Man, it looks good. Managed to fit our radiator in there. What's interesting about this, right, let's just get that out of the way, we've got all this room for activities down in here, but over on this side everything's all jammed up in this one area. The valve cover fails on the plug, and then there's a little sensor underneath there that fails on the fan. So we've got a bit of metal here that we can cut out and give us a bit of clearance and a bit of room. So yeah, anyway, I'll wait for those parts to arrive, and then we'll carry on building our fuel system. It's going really well. Okay, so here we go. It's been about a week now, and just about everything we need to finish this fuel system off has arrived. So what have we been waiting for? Well, new rubber hoses, new quick connectors for the fuel pump, some new barb fittings, And the one thing that hasn't arrived yet is the actual hose clamps to hold it all together. So how's it going to work? Well, pretty self-explanatory. Quick connectors go onto the fuel pump, runs into the new hosing into factory hard lines, which I've managed to blow out and clean. Surprisingly, there was still wet fuel inside those lines. I was quite surprised at that. Boy, did it stink like varnish. But anyway, factory fuel line needs to be cut in the engine bay to make it a bit shorter so that it will then go into the new hoses, and then we use our little barb connectors to connect the new hose with the old hose that's left over on the fuel rail, because Ford use some fancy connectors that I don't have the tools to take off, so I just cut the fuel line itself and we'll join those together. And we have some 3mm rubber mat to go between the actual fuel tank and the fuel pump, just for a little bit of insulation. So that's all just about ready to go in, but before we can whack the tank into the vehicle, we need to plug our little hole here. So for that, have a little bit of plate metal, and quite easy, that's going to go on there. We'll tack this side, bash it around to the correct shape, weld it fully around. That's going to be secure. Because the Fairmont fuel pump has a breather built into it, we're going to chop off the factory breather that's welded into the tank here, that comes part of it. We'll chop that off, weld up the little hole, and then this is ready to go back into the Cressida. Let's give it a crack. So there we go, there's our patch in place, bit of booger weld on there, but nothing a flap just can't clean up and make it look good. So that's patched. We've put some water in the tank and tested that it doesn't leak, so that's really good because we don't want fuel leaking out everywhere. And then as for the top here, our old breather hole's been sealed up as well. Now, why have I painted it white? Well, because everyone paints their stuff matte black, and matte black's boring. So I got matte white. We'll just make everything matte white. Yeah, so that's done, that's done. Oh, if you're wondering what this is the original fuel pickup for the carbide engine. So I've just cut those a bit shorter, looped a bit of hose around, and then that's going to take care of that. Now we need to cut our rubber mat, put that in there, put our fuel pump in for good, and then we can install our tank back into the Cressida once we move the engine crane, because that's in the bloody way. And just like that, we now have a fuel system sorted in the Cressida. This is absolutely fantastic and a huge step forward. So, obviously our tank's in, holds our spare wheel well in there nicely. I don't have to go cutting it out or welding it. Speaking of cutting out though, we did end up making a little access hole in here, just so we're able to bend the hoses and get my hand in there to actually push the clips onto the fuel pump, which is a lot easier to do. Now that's there. The sharp edges of the hole I've cut, they don't interfere with any of the fuel line. They're all free in and around there. Metal stainless clips everywhere to hold it all together. That's all connected to the hard lines, which then follow our car down to the front. And look at this masterpiece. So we got our inlet here going into our cheap filter. That will do for now till we find out if we need to upgrade to a bigger or better one. Going into our fuel rail, coming out of our fuel rail back into the tank. Now you can see
that I got rid of the male barbs because I found out that there's just barbs under these fancy connectors anyway. So chopped off the old Ford crap, put my nice new Aeroflow stuff on here, and now there is less risk of us blowing out or causing issues or hazards because we don't have that dodgy male barb in there anymore, which is great. So that is the fuel system sorted.
Well, I'm actually chuffed about that. That is the fuel system completely done. That's a huge step forward to getting this engine running again. It's fantastic. So that's how we'll break down this build. Each video will focus on one particular system. So in the case of this one, it's the fuel system. Then we'll break through the cooling system, get that all done. The diff, get that all done. And if we break up into those small segments, it's going to be much easier to get this car built and probably get it done quicker as well. So, a little side note as well, that fuel filter, I know it's the wrong one. It will not handle the pressure of the EFI system, but it's what I got sent. What I ordered and what arrived was not the same thing. So, at least that way we've built it, we know what needs to go in there, and we can just work with that for testing. Which that's all that's left. Put a little bit of petrol in the tank, put some power to the fuel pump, make sure there's no leaks once we pressurize it. Job done. See you later. So that's all. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Automotive Carnage.